I do not understand my own actions. I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate, says Paul. Sound familiar? Are your desires your own? Sure, on the one hand, we know that pleading, "the devil made me do it," to a judge or our spouse isn't going to get things done. And on the other, you've never had a rush of blood and done something, perhaps repeatedly, that you knew was bad for you. A little fake deduction on your taxes, a little shortcut on some homework, 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, all the while telling everyone else that you're an honest person. Often when we come to discussions around not understanding our own desires and the actions that result from those desires, the conversation quickly turns towards a certain set of people, namely alcoholics and addicts. They know this one better than most. I know this thing will kill me, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm willing to lock myself in a room with a substance that seems in its own way to want to kill me, and I am going to let it, which is insane. And people who are going through that know that it's insane. And then on the other side of that, being liberated from this addiction has enabled me to receive new life. And folks who aren't alcoholics or addicts will wonder what this is all about and come to believe that this is a problem relegated to those people. The stigma of disease has not been completely eliminated. So today I want to talk about desires and Paul's words, but I want to use something other than alcoholism and addiction. I'd rather talk about golf instead. I feel like I can talk about guys playing golf because I'm a guy who has played some golf. The preacher here is also the sinner. Now, we might joke about the person who spends too much time or a lot of time chasing a white ball around. We might joke about how far this fanaticism can go. Just look at this, a golf-themed casket entitled Fairway to Heaven. It can be yours for $1,950. With anything, though, this can go too far. Malcolm Gladwell recently did a podcast in his revisionist history series on golf where he cited a study in the Harvard Business Review that examined the golfing habits of more than 350 CEOs of S&P 1500 companies who maintain a handicap with the U.S. Golf Association. There was a clear correlation between CEOs who play golf more often that are associated with companies who offer lower average return on their investments and lower market capitalization. We find CEOs that golf frequently are associated with firms that have lower operating performance, wrote the researchers. We provide evidence that some CEOs shirk their responsibilities by showing that the firms with CEOs who play the most are the least profitable. Gladwell expands on this. The more golf a CEO plays, the more he is likely to be fired. It's not just a harmless habit. It is a dangerous habit. In the midst of the meltdown in 2007, the CEO of Bear Stearns was taking his helicopter out of Manhattan to play golf in New Jersey while his company was collapsing around him. He could not stop playing. An important employee that did something that caused him to miss enormous amounts of work and engaged in an activity that clearly harmed his performance, would put his own career in jeopardy, you would say, whoa, check that guy into rehab. In Gladwell's words, that's golf, crack cocaine for rich white guys. And Paul said, I do not understand my own actions. Of course, you don't need to golf or to drink or to gamble or to be stuck with pills to understand these words. I've gone through an examination, like a lot of folks recently, regarding my own use of social media. A lot of us cannot stand the absurdity of reading something political next to something that is a recipe for a casserole, which is next to a cat video, which is next to your genuinely happy news that your child just graduated from preschool. Not only does this decrease my capacity to understand empathy when somebody has something genuinely bad happen to them, it also decreases my capacity to experience joy when you are posting that graduation picture of your child in preschool. There's a book called The Happiness Effect by a lady named Donna Freitas, who interviews dozens of college students to talk about the loathing they often feel towards the fakery of the selfie, or the ridiculousness of people arranging an event so that the primary purpose is to show off to other people, or the absurdity of pretending that life is always great. The subtitle of the book is How Social Media is Driving a Generation to Appear Perfect at Any Cost. To appear perfect? That is quite a burden. At any cost, that is really something. There's the real knowledge that comes from understanding that your future employers will look at your online presence. So vulnerability is impossible. You must always edit yourself to ensure that you appear in the best possible light. I am not suggesting that those are bad or stupid things. What's mind-bending is to hear the same person who says that social media makes them miserable, or that it's fake, or that it's a landmine, also employs that technology dozens of times a day, or even just once a day. Why would you do something every day that is totally optional, that doesn't bring you either contentment or improve your health or provide something tangibly positive? And Paul said, I do not understand my own actions. He is, in his long-winded, winding, meandering way, talking about two different kinds of law at work in his life. A law that orders things appropriately, that comes from God. What you should and shouldn't do, what is right living, how we should seek to live life, which in Paul's way of looking at it is for God and for each other and for the ethics of Christ, and for a baptism that undermines the four pillars of Roman society: patriarchy, slavery, hierarchy, and power through conquest. An experience of the world rooted in thanksgiving for all that God has done and is doing there, but for the grace of God go I. And another kind of law or experience that dictates that even when he is doing the right thing, the wrong thing seems close at hand. He uses the word captive to describe a sense of freedom that requires more than just trying harder or pushing through it or intending to do well. Smokers quit 39 times before it sticks. A man sobers up on his 54th time trying it. A woman stops gambling after her 5th bankruptcy and not her 4th. We are all living in some sort of Venn diagram, with the two circles being the person that I am and the other circle being the person I hoped or I would be or wanted to be on every level, as a parent and a son, a spouse, a sibling, a worker, a manager, employee, a friend, an athlete, one who is virtuous and kind and generous at every turn, one who knows theology and classics and also how to fix a car and to race a car really well while saving the environment and being a great pilot and bringing peace to the world, all at the same time. I get the sense that Paul is moving us in Romans to ask what it means to be a Christian in both circles of your Venn diagram. Are the things that you wanted to be as virtuous and right and beautiful as you intended? And what is it that you have become that needs to overlap further with the person you hoped you would become? And for some of us, a life of faith then ought to be marked more by our capacity to say no, and asking for the strength and the wisdom and the tools and the gratitude we need to be able to say no. What will stop us from playing golf to the detriment of our employees, or drinking to the detriment of ourselves and our families, or checking Instagram dozens of times a day? There isn't a singular answer there, other than asking how you want to belong, and if the things that you say make you popular or loved or held close are actually helping you to be free and to be vulnerable and to be open. Are the things you hold close taking on a law of their own, to use Paul's words? Are your desires leading you to joy? I suppose that there is a concrete difference between saying, I can't do something and I won't do something. When we say I can't, the object has the power. When we say I won't, it's me that retains some of the control. But even then, for a lot of us, that isn't enough. Willpower will only get us so far. Are our desires our own? Sometimes life does require a miracle. This wasn't the only church that I applied to when I was looking for a new congregation a few years ago. At another church, whose name I won't mention, we were at an interview. And of course, in these things, they bring the spouses along. Why, I'm not sure, but Stacy sat there interviewing with me for the senior minister position of another congregation. And so a gentleman on the search committee decided to ask her what her ministry was in the church, as if she didn't have a ministry already. And there are times when someone asks a question of your spouse, and you just get to sit there and think, this is going to be good. Stacy explained that nursing was and is her ministry and has been for a long time, of course. That is her way of offering the ethics of Christ and serving her neighbor and loving the world. Today we say Godspeed and farewell for now to Bill and Judy. You'll see some pictures of them on the screen and a little loop, including the announcement from 1969 of Bill's call to Union Kong. The temptation is to focus on Bill and his ministry among us because he was on staff here, he worked here, he started the counseling center, and he taught and he ministered and he preached and he officiated and he supported. Of course, I do want to make sure that we hear again that nursing is a ministry. You like the arrows there, just in case you didn't know who that was. Nursing is a ministry in a specialized setting with a specialized education, a ministry of healing and support and compassion. And certainly the way I imagine Judy Lutz would have done it. What would life be without Bill and Judy Lutz at Union Congregational Church? I have just in my short time here many fond memories. A couple of winters ago when we had that record-setting storm, more than 2 feet of snow here in Montclair, everything was closed down, including church services on Sunday morning, but we had church. Bill hiked down from Highland Avenue. We had church in the Guild Room, and he gave a perfect sermon for the day full of great anecdotes and personal history. And if you know Bill and Judy, you know that the stories are many, and some of them are very funny. I love the story of Bill leaning against the cow that he was milking at the crack of dawn in rural Ohio as a boy just to stay warm. Some of these stories are very serious, living and ministering on the space coast of Florida as the United States nearly came to global war with the Soviets comes to mind. Those stories are wonderful, but it's the authenticity of the storytellers that is easily the best part of all of the Lutz stories. It is lives lived with integrity and authenticity that illuminate Paul's words in Romans. In Judy's case, people's minds and bodies did not always do what they wanted. They were captive in their own way, and Judy was there to help. From Union Kong's point of view, of course, Bill's ministry among us, near us, and for many of us has been a way of bringing people towards freedom. Children who want to please their parents but don't know how. Parents who want to understand their kids but don't know how. Adults who want to get sober but don't know how. Older adults who want to confront their loneliness but don't know how. People of all ages struggling with relationships and how to be reconciled to their mother or their son but don't know how. Bill was there for thousands of Montclairians and New Yorkers in the midst of their don't know hows, helping people to try and become free and whole and live full lives. Because there isn't a trick to getting sober or getting balanced or getting well or getting out of the rat race or getting out of the need to be on the course while your workers are going full speed to cover for you, or to stop gambling, to quit the rush of affirmation from friends on social media. Except the trick is that you're going to need someone or some people to be there with you in the midst of your don't know hows, who will at times patiently guide you into a life of gratitude. Remember that the 12th step of the 12 steps is expressly about a spiritual awakening. And there is no such thing as an individual Christian or an individual person of faith, but people of faith who are formed always in community and relationship. And so therefore, you will, in the midst of your don't know hows, need someone to patiently guide you into a life of gratitude, and also have the capacity to grab you by the shoulders and remind you of your accountability in your relationships. In order to understand your don't know how I'm ever going to do this, so that I am free to live for God or neighbor or other, and have the capacity to love myself, ourselves, we're going to need somebody else. This isn't the power of positive thinking. It is the power of life in relationship and community. And then there's the other side. Bill and Judy are just funny, delightful, smart people who know themselves and who seem to have figured out that freedom is found by loving family and friends, neighbors and strangers, clients, patients, and kids of all ages. I'll never forget the first time my own son, Ben, met Bill Lutz. Bill sat down so that he could be at eye level with Ben. He held his hand, he looked him square in the eye, and he smiled an unusual smile in our day and age. His face told Ben, I would rather be nowhere else on this planet than with you, right here, right now. That is an expression of spiritual enlightenment. For many people, that is the miracle that they have been waiting for. It is the only way through your I don't know how. Bill, you've been doing that for us since 1969. We are so grateful. Amen.